Oh, it's me, Gina. After a little break, I'm back because a lot of you have been asking me why I've been not making videos. So I decided I would get on it this morning. Today's recipe is going to be for a slow cooker Yankee pot roast. Yankee pot roast is like a shredded beef pot roast served over egg noodles, which is one of my favorite things ever. So let's jump right in. Our ingredients today are a 4 or 5 pound beef chuck roast. You could use whatever type of roast you like. I actually wanted a bottom round roast but couldn't find one. Those tend to stay more together and you can slice them. But this shreds up nicely and is fine. We're eating it over egg noodles, so that's great. So I have one of those. We have 6 carrots. We have 2 yellow onions. I've got some garlic. We have rosemary and thyme, which we're going to use for our bouquet garni. And then for the sauce, we've got some organic beef stock, some tomato paste, obviously salt and pepper, and then we're going to use a little bit of red wine. And as a side note, please use a red wine that you are willing to drink, because even though a lot of people say you can cook with cheap wine, if you're not willing to drink it, don't put it in your food. It's not going to be good. So this happens to be my favorite red wine right now. It's the Apothic Crush. And then towards the end, when I go to put it in the slow cooker, I'm going to add a nice fat pad of butter, which adds a little bit of richness. This is my absolute favorite kind of butter, this Kerrygold butter. Jeez, my daughter's being crazy. Sorry. This is my favorite kind of butter, the Kerrygold Irish butter. It's delish. And then for our cooking fat, I happen to have bacon fat on hand, so this is about 1/4 cup. Bacon fat adds a nice richness and some extra flavor to the sauce, but if you don't have that, you can feel free to use some vegetable oil or avocado oil. You're going to want something with a nice high smoke point, because we are going to be searing the roast at a medium-high heat before we put it in the slow cooker. And then lastly, for serving, we are going to use egg noodles. I've got 2 packages because I've got a lot of people coming. And I've got some fresh parsley. And I am so sorry because, as I've mentioned in previous videos, I do not know how to edit videos. So I just will make the finished product the thumbnail. Did that make any sense? I will make the thumbnail photo the finished product. So anyways, and lastly, we do have some butcher's twine. I may tie up this chuck roast a little bit. It's a little bit loose in one area, and we're also going to use this butcher's twine to make our bouquet garni. And then let me have a moment. I'm going to go ahead and salt and pepper this roast and decide if I'm going to tie it up, and I will be back when we are searing it. Side note, I forgot to mention my beef. All of my meat, I always wash it with coarse salt. So I basically cover the whole thing with a bunch of salt and then kind of like exfoliate it. And then I rinse it. And then I have like super thoroughly dried this. You need to make sure to dry your beef that you're going to sear, because if there's any type of moisture left on the outside, it is not going to get like that caramelization that we're looking for. And why waste the time and dirtying a whole nother pot if we're putting it in the slow cooker if it is not going to brown? So please make sure to dry your meat after you wash it. And please wash your meat, nasty. I did opt to tie my roast. This is nicely marbled because it's a chuck roast, which means that like the fat is kind of like the connective tissue. So certain parts, like this lobe of meat, if you will separate from this one, and so on and so forth. So even though we're going to shred this up, because I'm going to sear it first, I opted to tie it. You don't have to sear it. You could just kind of like do the sauce and then put everything in the slow cooker. So if you're going to do that, like, don't worry about tying it. But I did decide to do that. So I have salted and peppered it. I have a nice big heavy stainless steel pot on medium high, and I'm melting our fat. And as soon as I get this in there, I will be back. All right, so I have our meat, the seasoned side down in my big pot, and it sure is a big piece of meat. I had to kind of squish it in there. So I'm actually going to go and raise the heat up a little bit, because I do want to make sure that the meat is caramelizing and browning and not steaming. And I'm going to be leaving it in there for about 5 minutes before I flip it. And in the meantime, I will season this side of the roast, and I will get this nasty mess cleaned up so we can start chopping our veg. Okay, sorry, this is a little bit loud, but the meat is sizzling away. I just went ahead and I flipped over our roast, and as you can see, it has a really nice brown caramelized color. So I'm gonna let this go for another 5 minutes. And while that happens, I have started preparing the vegetables. So I peeled our 2 yellow onions and I cut them into eighths, which are just large chunks. And then I peeled 3 cloves of garlic, which I'm going to rough chop. And then I'm going to peel these carrots and get them taken care of. I haven't decided what size I'm going to do yet, so after I've prepared them, I will let you know. And I will be right back. Okay, so our roast is done browning. I stuck it in the crock pot. And then I dumped off a little bit of the fat, and then we want to leave all that crusty stuff that's called the fond in the bottom of the pan because that is more flavor. So now I'm going to dump in our onions. Let them get going for a minute until they're translucent. Sorry, it's a little smoky in here. I had the flame up nice and high to get the caramelization going on the roast. Alright, so we'll leave that alone for a second. I'm going to add a sprinkle of salt because adding salt to your veg while you're sauteing it helps it release the moisture faster. And then in a moment, I will add our fresh garlic, which I've rough chopped to the pan. We will add some tomato paste, and then we're going to deglaze the pan with the red wine, let the alcohol boil off, and then add our beef stock, and then start getting everything else into the slow cooker. And this is the size I decided to go with for our carrots. Sorry, I don't know why my camera is doing that. I went with a large dice on a bias because we are serving this over egg noodles. So give me a moment to get myself back in gear and I'll be right back. Okay, so our onions have gone for a little bit. They're not totally translucent, but we are going to be slow cooking this. So I think this is good. Plus the fond is getting really dark and I don't want it to burn. So I am going to... You see my camera doing that? That's so weird. Anyways, whatever. I'm going to add... Oops, dripping it on my white cabinet. Our white wine. So it's up nice and high. And we are going to now start scraping all of those brown bits up off the bottom of the pot because we want that to add flavor to the sauce. Okay, so what the heck with my camera? Alright, we're just going to have to deal with that for the rest of the video. Sorry. So now I put the heat up nice and high. I am going to let this red wine simmer off for a moment to burn off some of the alcohol. And while that happens, I'm going to add a nice big whack, maybe about like 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, and let that melt into the sauce. Going to add our fresh garlic in there. I actually should have put this in when the onions were sauteing, but I started freaking out because my camera is jumping. So, note to self, yourself, put this in towards the end of the onion sauteing. It'll be fine though. Alright, so now that all of that's in there, I'm going to go ahead and let that alcohol burn off, and then I'm going to get going on our bouquet garni. Bouquet garni is just a fancy word, French word for bundle of herbs. I also forgot to mention when I was saying the ingredients that we do need to have 2 bay leaves in here. So if you can tie them up in here, that's great. If not, it's fine. Here I have about 3 sprigs of thyme, fresh thyme, and 1 sprig of fresh rosemary, and I will use that butcher's twine to tie it all up into a nice little packet. Okay, so our red wine has reduced, the alcohol has cooked off, and now I'm going to add 2 cups of beef stock to the pot. So here's 1, and here's 2. And then I will mix this up. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat there. And then this is our bouquet garni. So I just tied up the herbs. I wasn't able to get the bay leaves inside because one is nice and big. So I'm just going to pop them here in with the roast. I'm going to go ahead and add our carrots and try to kind of nestle them around the roast. It's a big piece of meat, so sorry about my camera, guys. I don't know. I actually just got a new phone because I had a problem with my other one, and now it appears that I'm having a problem with this one as well. So I've nestled the carrots around the roast, and then I'm going to go ahead and pop the bouquet garni in here. The string that is the long string, you leave hanging outside of the pot so you can easily fish it out. I would have been able to easily fish this out, but I just wanted to show you what the actual purpose was. And then now I'm going to cut a couple of pats of butter and place them along the top of the roast before I dump the liquid on. So let me go ahead and take care of that, and I will be right back. All right, really quick, I put 3 fat pads of butter on the top. Alrighty, this is our our finished product. I dumped the liquid and the onions in there. I kind of jiggled everything around to mix it up as best as I could, mixing up the carrots and the onions. I ended up tucking the herbs into the side where the liquid is, because it's going to need to be inside of the liquid to release its flavor. And now I'm going to put this in the slow cooker for about 8 hours on low. And then when it's finished, I will remove the meat, shred it up, and depending on the consistency, you can puree half of the sauce and then add the vegetables back to the pot, and it will thicken it. Or you can thicken it with flour paste. So I will notate that in the comments what I decided to do, because I always do different things. And thanks for watching my stupid video with my stupid camera, and I hope you all have a great day.